awareness phase. How do you know that there's a problem? And we also covered the identification and assessment phase, right? You assess it and then you identify what the key issues are that we need to work on as business owners, and then as a guide on the side, how I can help you frame up the solution. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this next segment here is how do you fix the problem? How do you get to the point where not only have you admitted that, okay, there's a problem, you can look and see, we've assessed it, here is the problem, and then what do we do about it? This is where we really get into a lot of the even more deeply into that psychosocial, the psychological and social implications of changing. Because neurologically, we just really hate change. and you can ask anybody in the consulting world, and I've had my fair share of dealing with this with leaders, is change management. The first thing that you have to address in change management is the belief, the proclivity that people have to hang on to that thing with which they were comfortable. That last thing that they got used to that's been grooved so deeply into their neurology that they have to let go of that. And that's what makes change so hard. And so the next phase after conscious incompetence is this when you figure out, okay, I know what the issues are. I don't know how to fix them right now. Is we develop a plan of action with milestones. We look at the key areas. So let's take the 8 key drivers of business growth. We look at the key areas where the scores are low, and we've agreed that we need to get those scores up in order to increase the value of the organization or of the company. Then we develop a plan of action based on the strategy. What is the strategy? And we reverse engineer the strategic pieces into tactical blocks. And when we do that, we'll be moving into the next phase, which is conscious competence. This is when we've started to embed some new values, mores into the organization. This is when we've been able to create systems to be able to move the new changes ahead. Some of that might involve automation. Some of it might involve the owner getting rid of pieces of his or her portfolio and handing it off to somebody else who's responsible. It might involve bringing new people on. Unfortunately, sometimes it might involve asking people who aren't well suited to get off the bus, to use Jim Collins' parlance, right, from Good to Great, where he says that when you're looking at a massive change or building an organization that he calls a level 5, a super excellent organization, you got to get the right people on the bus, you got to get the wrong people off the bus, and then you have to get all the right people, all the right butts in the right seats, right? And so whenever you're thinking about getting to that next level, the 3 legs of the stool are people, processes, and technology. Do you have the right people in the right seats in the bus? Do you have the right processes? Are they written down? Are these processes where, unfortunately, if somebody decides, hey, I want to move to Hawaii, and then they leave, that there are written processes for a pass down, that the next person who comes on board can take ownership of that piece of the business, right? And then the last thing is the technology. Do you have the right technology suites? Are people using the technology suite? You have no idea how many times, and by the way, like I said, no one's immune, right? I'm employing new technology suites all the time to streamline and make my company more efficient and less dependent on me. That change is hard. Well, you have no idea how many times I've gone into companies and they'll say, oh yeah, well, we have this new program that does that. And I'll say, well, how well are you employing it? And they just kind of smirk at me like, well, I have login credentials, so it's like, okay, so you have login credentials, but you're not using it. And they say, well, Mike over there is using it. And then I'll say, well, how important is it that you are using it as well? And they're like, well, it's pretty important. So once again, we're dealing with the emotional things that are stopping people up from adopting new systems that are going to help them increase their effectiveness as a business. So once we get that down the road, then we reach a step that's called conscious competence. And this conscious competence is really where people start getting the new skills down. Their new behaviors are becoming a little bit more habitual, but they still have to think too hard about it, right? They still have to think about it. Once again, it's kind of like tying your shoes, right? When we were little kids, we learned how to tie our shoes. It was very laborious, very painful, and our moms or our dads or our preschool, kindergarten teachers had to really take time, here's the hole, the rabbit runs through the hole. Now we don't even think about it, right? We just put our shoes on, tie them, and we're gone. So that, where we just put our shoes on, tie them, and then we're out the door, is the level that we call unconscious competence. And this is when doing those natural success habits becomes like falling off a log, right? Like getting out of bed in the morning and putting your feet on the floor. You're just in flow. But here's what happens. And by the way, at whatever phase you are in your business, you've already gone through this to get to the phase that you're at. The issue and the challenge here is to get to the next phase. Unfortunately, it's a scrub because you have to start all over again. Because like I said in a previous video, what got you here won't get you there. So that's part of the process of how I, in the beginning stages, help business owners analyze, assess, identify, become aware of that there is an issue, formulate a battle plan to get that issue taken care of, and then execute it on a daily basis by drilling down to what are the key behaviors and attitudes that the organization has to have to go from here to there. And that's what we call accelerated breakthrough. We use multiple modalities, we use multiple assessments, and we look at different parts of the organization and try to see how synergistically is the best way to approach and attack that problem so that we can have the maximum, what I call Venturi effect, right? Venturi is like a nozzle. It's how do we blast away the inessentials and how do we move from level A to level B in the most rapid, safe, efficient, effective, and emotionally pleasing manner possible. Thanks.